My brother and I were always outspoken. Apart from that, I was quite average as a teenager. That's why I tried to satisfy my need for attention by making witty comments. Sometimes my quips were really clever, and I still remember some of the best ones today. What I don't like to remember is how often my comments were simply mean. When I see today how sensitive many young people are, I'm ashamed about the cold-blooded way I spoke of others in the past. I still remember one girl in my class coming to school one day wearing contact lenses. She looked completely different than usual because her eyes appeared so much smaller than with glasses. And we tend to attack and ridicule everything that is out of the ordinary. Without thinking, I burst out, "You look like a child with Down syndrome." Her reaction showed that she was really hurt. To this day, the memory makes me squirm inside because I am still embarrassed. I acted wrongly towards her and towards the other children involved. And if God is the creator, we sin against him when we sin against others. If you build or create something and I destroy it, this is not a matter that affects only me and your creation. And this is also true of God. Every time I hurt somebody with my stupid comments, God winces. In my wrongdoing, I remove myself far from him, the sacred one. I am usually not aware of this, otherwise I might have kept my mouth shut and hadn't hurt, for example, my classmate. And later on I was ashamed. How embarrassed I would have been about my comments if God had been visible. Unimaginable. I literally would have sunk into the ground in shame.
The prophets, people to whom God appeared, went through similar experiences. For example, Daniel saw God and fainted, and the prophet Isaiah cried out in terror and said, "There is no hope for me, I'm doomed because every word that passes my lips is sinful, and I live amongst a people whose every word is sinful." What Isaiah saw at that moment was similar to the grand scene in the book of Revelation in chapter 4. Different beings gather around the throne of God and worship him. They say God alone is worthy because he is the creator. It seems that there is no one left in this heavenly world who joined the rebellion. All are loyal to God, and they are happy and free of guilt. Only our earth belongs to the dragon. We are the only ones who do not belong in the heavenly sphere. It's our sin that excludes us. Now, I feel this. I feel that I am unworthy, and I would love to be in that sphere, completely accepted and at peace. But if we continue reading the book of Revelation, something absolutely unexpected happens in chapter 5. The mood in heaven changes.
Then I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll with writing on both sides and sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming in a loud voice, "Who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll?" But no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth could open the scroll or even look inside it. I wept and wept because no one was found who was worthy to open the scroll or look inside.
Excuse me? No one is worthy? Why doesn't God open the scroll himself? After all, the book of Revelation describes God's glory and the awe of his creatures. The angels praise God and proclaim that he alone is worthy. But all this isn't enough to break a few seals? Of course, this says something about the scroll, but it also expresses something about God. Despite his holiness, his glory and power as creator, he seems to be missing something. This is no minor thing. John is aghast at this fact, deeply upset that the scroll cannot be opened.
is the story behind this mysterious document which is sealed with 7 seals? 2 chapters later, the seals are broken after all. And what then unfolded, that is, within the last 2,000 years, has affected all of us as humans. We witness Jesus as a victorious rider, but we have also witnessed other riders who brought crisis and destruction. Humanity has seen martyrs who suffered for their convictions and witnessed catastrophes, and the final act is the Last Judgment. The scroll reveals the final outcome of the fight between God and the dragon, and how it decides humanity's fate. The scroll reveals the final outcome of the fight between God and the dragon, and how it decides humanity's fate. It is this that God holds in his hands, and this is a sore point. God is worshipped throughout the universe, but the rebellion on our small planet continues. Apparently God, in his throne chamber, is as aware of the fact as we are. Everyone is there, except human beings. He misses us, but our fate, which is symbolized by the scroll, cannot be decided by a simple governmental act. Our sin can't be erased by decree, even if it is the Holy One himself who does it. John realizes this and begins to weep bitterly. In this vision, he is suddenly addressed directly.
Then one of the elders said to me, "Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scrolls and its 7 seals."
So there is somebody who can open the scroll after all. The Lion of Judah, the Root of David. This is an unusual title. What lies behind all this? In the Old Testament, only one person is described in this way, the Messiah. Why is he the only one who can open the seal? Why can he do something that God the Father cannot directly do? The answer for John comes immediately and is a surprise.
Then I saw a lamb, looking as if it had been slain, standing in the center of the throne, encircled by the 4 living creatures and the elders. He went and took the scroll from the right hand of him who sat on the throne.
John looks for a mighty lion, but only finds a defenseless lamb, a slaughtered one. And in Revelation 12, where the great ruler of the world arrives as a baby, the Messiah appears as a weak lamb. In this form, he faced humanity and its sins. He faced us, the rebels. He didn't inflict a crushing defeat on the world and its rebellion. The contrary is the case.
Of course, the lamb has appeared earlier and is a symbol taken from the Old Testament. From the beginning, slaughtered lambs play a key role. Unfortunately, their significance is often confused with the cults of animal worship that existed at the time. However, the Hebrew sacrificial service stands in stark contrast to all the other temple rituals. One example, Zelek lived in Ammon, east of Israel. He was a content man. The only thing that made him really angry was his neighbour Nachash. Since Nachash inherited a lush orchard, he behaved with the arrogance of a wealthy landlord. After Nachash had again behaved very arrogantly in the meeting of the elders, Zelek tiptoed to his farm in the middle of the night and in his rage killed 2 of Nachash's goats. Then he couldn't sleep. Could he have angered Milcom, the god of the Ammonites? Should he expect retribution? To be on the safe side, the next morning he went immediately to his temple and sacrificed a pig to appease Milcom. Perhaps the god would forget this anger and protect Zelek from harm. Or was one pig enough? The fear remained, and the bad feelings as well. If Serach, an Israelite living several kilometers to the west, made the same mistake, his situation would be completely different. Serach would know without a doubt that his deed was against God's will. His jealousy and cruel behavior would have been against the holy God. He had sinned. How could he face his God? Even if he admitted his deed to his neighbor and paid for the damage, his neighbor wouldn't be able to free him from his sin. But one way was open to Serach. He could go to the temple, lay his hand on the head of a lamb, and by doing so, transfer his sin to the animal. Then the lamb would be slaughtered on his behalf, and Serach could be sure that he would be forgiven and would be at peace with God.
This is amazing. In this case, sin isn't swept under the carpet. Instead, it's taken seriously in all its awfulness. However, humanity is never forced to appease God. A gracious God wants humanity to be free of sin. And the focus of this ritual is a lamb. What does it stand for? Is it a small gift presented by the sinner? Is it a sacrifice representing penance? No, the lamb doesn't stand for humanity's act. It represents the actions of God. It's not humanity, but God who transfers the sin. The small lamb is an image of something very great, and here in Revelation 5 is a fulfillment of the symbolism. The Redeemer who died innocently. He did indeed take our sin upon himself. It can't be expressed better than in this quote from Prophet Isaiah.
And he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. That punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth.
Jesus Christ did this. On the cross, he performed the act that was implied in every animal sacrifice. The sinner is freed from his or her guilt. This sounds so simple, but it's the most complicated, most difficult, and the greatest gift in the history of the universe. Because now everyone living on this earth can, if he or she wishes, come to God. I can come to him. My sin has been laid upon Jesus, and I will not be destroyed by it. God can release me from the memory of the biting remarks that constantly alarmed my conscience, and many other things as well. I can now be declared righteous in God's sight without dying of sin. I am one of all the creatures who happily gather around God's throne. I can live.
The Lamb is able to make the sinful ones innocent, and through his sacrifice they are torn from the dragon's claws. His death crushed the head of the serpent. That is why the Lamb is the focus here, not only in chapter 5, but in the whole book of Revelation. That's why the Lamb is worthy of opening the scroll and bringing the long chapter of humanity's story to an end. This is also expressed by the 24 elders around God's throne.
You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slain, and with your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation.
And all the angels and creatures on earth join in. It is finished. Now the history of salvation can unfold. One day harmony will be restored in the universe. In the last sentences of chapter 5, one can feel the enthusiasm and relief which the victory of the Lamb has brought. Now the crucial question is, are you relieved? At least personally. This is a key question. The answer shows how you cope with your sin. This is the crux of the matter. At this point, many people drift away because sin doesn't go well with a I'm okay, you're okay mentality. We all have our weaknesses, but deep in our hearts, we aren't that bad. Our goodwill makes up for our failings. We refer to a vague and mysterious core of goodness inside the person. That's typically human.
And it's a serious problem, not only because at the end it overburdens us and puts us under pressure, it also prevents us from dealing with our personal darkness and our dependencies. We miss the opportunity to look into the eyes of our merciful God and really come to terms with Him. If I wish to switch to God's side, it's not enough for me to realize His goodness. I must perceive that I am bad. I must recognize that the good in me can't outdo the evil. I can't ignore my sin and can't work it off. Only when I confess to God and myself that I have no hope, then suddenly the death of the Lamb makes sense. Suddenly it becomes true. He takes on my sin for me, and I surrender.
Apple's triumphal march started when Steve Jobs returned to the company in 1996. The following year, while he was running Apple as well as the Pixar film studio, he got kidney stones. In 2003, when iPods and iTunes were already very successful, his doctor convinced Steve Jobs to undergo a kidney scan which also detected a tumor in his pancreas. An immediate operation was vital. Doctors, family and colleagues tried to convince Steve of that, but he refused to see how critical his situation was. His biographer Walter Isaacson writes that Jobs had the tremendous ability to focus on a desired goal and believe that everything in his environment obeyed his will. Colleagues called this a reality distortion field. This also meant that he simply ignored facts. For 9 months he did nothing to address his tumour except to try some curative diets. He felt strong and healthy and believed that he was able to cope with this problem by himself. Jobs wasn't willing to give up and seek medical advice. When he finally underwent surgery, there were already 3 metastatic tumours in his liver. The cancer had spread, and it caused Steve Jobs' death 7 years later.
Most of us are not as brilliant and radical as Steve Jobs, but many of us have a reality distortion field too when it comes to our sin. We like to ignore it. We refuse to accept its existence. It's simply too unpleasant for us. But the book of Revelation tells us that whitewashing will get us nowhere. This book is about the bare facts. You are sick. Without any treatment, you are going to die. You need the Lamb that relieves you of sin and brings you peace with God. Do you surrender?